grab a seat, but don't take it anywhere. A few things came up during the break, but one was about the Queen, that, you know, she's sovereign and she doesn't handle money. She has someone to do that for her. So that's a message. The word sovereign, we learnt, was actually underlord, because she swears an oath to the Messiah, when in fact we have an oath to our Creator. Whereas what we should be saying is using the word souverain, which is actually an overlord, on par with the Messiah. We're co-creators. So we're not under, we're actually at the same level. And even in the scriptures it says we are kings and... what's the exact terminology? I know I saw the word kings. Someone claimed we were gods, but I don't believe that. I think we're I think he said sons of God. Sons of the Creator.
Well, it certainly says that.
Yep.
Sorry?
Certainly says that.
Yeah. So we have to be very careful, because I've been to some of these big Pentecostal shows where they, they get everyone hyperactive and say, look, we're gods. Well, I don't see that anywhere in the scripture, and I've read it a few times. So one has to be careful with philosophy. We've got to remember too that all churches are also registered. And by definition, they've given their authority to the party that they're registered with. The state. I forgot to read that. You know, the state. So they serve another master. I forgot to have that written. Anybody good at reading?
Yes.
Would you like to go? Oh, Dennis, of course you are. Of course. Now there's a man with a very strong voice and that can project a voice. I like reading this because this is where we went wrong, and it's a point of origin where... Anyone heard of Samuel? He was a prophet. Before governments ever came about, the ancient lands of the Hebrews, they had prophets which led the nation. And he was the intermediate between the Creator and the people, you know, God's people. However, he had two sons who were a little bit more colourful, and the population were a bit concerned about them, that they might not be quite as honourable as old Sammy was. So if you could just read, this is 1 Samuel chapter 8 verse 3, and to the end of the chapter. So yeah.
So just that bit?
And to the end of the chapter, which is one page. It's not.
Thank you for gathering here this morning. I'll read from chapter 8 verse 3. And his sons walked not in his ways, but turned aside after lucre, and took bribes and perverted judgment. 4. Then all the elders of Israel gathered themselves together, and came to Samuel unto Ramah. 5. And said unto him, Behold, thou art old, and thy sons walk not in thy ways. Now make us a king to judge us like all the nations. 6. But the thing displeased Samuel, when they said, Give us a king to judge us. And Samuel prayed unto the Lord. And the Lord said unto Samuel, Hearken unto the voice of the people in all that they say unto thee. For they have not rejected thee, but they have rejected me, that I should not reign over them. According to all the works which they have done since the day that I brought them up out of Egypt, even unto this day, wherewith they have forsaken me and served other gods, so do they also unto thee. Now therefore hearken unto their voice, howbeit yet protest solemnly unto them, and show them the manner of the king that shall reign over them. And Samuel told all the words of the Lord unto the people that asked of him a king. And he said, This will be the manner of the king that shall reign over you.
That's what your government's going to do to you.
He will take your sons and appoint them for himself, for his chariots, and to be his horsemen, and some shall run before his chariots. And he will appoint him captains over thousands, and captains over 50s, and will set them to ear his ground, and to reap his harvest, and to make his instruments of war, and instruments of his chariots. And he will take your daughters to be confectioners, and to be cooks, and to be bakers. And he will take your fields, and your vineyards, and your olive yards, even the best of them, and give them to his servants. And he will take the 10th of your seed and of your vineyards and give to his officers and to his servants.
80%, not 10.
And he will take your men servants and your maid servants and your goodliest young men and your asses and put them to his work. He will take the 10th of your sheep, and ye shall be his servants. And ye shall cry out in that day because of your king, which ye shall have chosen you, and the Lord will not hear you in that day. Nevertheless, the people refused to obey the voice of Samuel, and they said, Nay, but we will have a king over us, that we also may be like all the nations, and that our king may judge us, and go out before us and fight our battles. And Samuel heard all the words of the people, and he rehearsed them in the ears of the Lord. And the Lord said to Samuel, Hearken unto their voice, and make them a king. And Samuel said unto the men of Israel, Go ye every man unto his city.
Thank you very much, Janice. You said that very well. The point was they swore an allegiance to someone other than the Creator. So they were no longer his people. And he did say he will continue to love them, but he said, You're now at the mercy of the earthly king, and I won't intervene. Not for a certain amount of time. Because otherwise, if he was seen to intervene, we'd be saying, oh, you just won't give us a chance to see that our way works. When it in fact doesn't work too well, does it? The world's sort of imploding, isn't it? And today, tomorrow I'll be sharing a bit more about that, how we can take steps to protect ourselves about the difficulties that are going to come upon us. But I just wanted that because that was the point of origin. And the interesting thing is the scriptures actually show two periods in history where the nation was really, literally the most prosperous on earth. They even had the most wealthy man in recorded history. You might remember Solomon, because they were obedient to the Creator. Remember the commandments? Isn't 10 instructions a lot? They're just guides, but aren't they a lot easier to follow than 7 million Australian statutes or 50 million American ones? How can anyone know them? But you have to, because you're now presumed to be chattel. And if you're using the state's money, which is copyrighted and patented, then by just using them, you're deemed to be a law merchant. And a merchant knows the law. So if you go into court and, oh sorry, I didn't understand or didn't comprehend that law, ignorance of the law is no excuse. They'll throw it at you every time because you're a law merchant. You're using their money. It's deemed by presumption that you know the law. So don't bring any flippy excuse into this courtroom.
Don't record what you're using.
I love that because I use it against them. Your Honour, he reckons he doesn't understand it. What, is it ignorance of the law an excuse now, is it? You look at them and, Your Honour, is ignorance of the law an excuse? Silence. I take it that it's not. Better sit down or I'm going to come after you. Where's your cheque? I'm now the injured party. See how you can use it against them? You just got to know the ground rules, that's all. So, we're law merchants. Over here in the private, man, we have just a few instructions to follow. We're not to do this or that, or to rape and pillage and plunder and not to harm anyone. Over here, we have statutes and laws and acts. What's an act? Just words. Who uses acts? Actors, Clowns. They're telling us, if you're a person, you've got to abide by these. And while we're on that subject, let me read you a law, or a judgment. It's not a law, it's a judgment that we picked up here. And you might want to write it down, you might not, but they had a judgment back in 1796, still applies, and there are others like it too. Every man is independent. What's independent? Separate from, isn't it? Independent of all laws. Where are laws? except those prescribed by nature. Except those prescribed by nature. So in other words, things that you have no control over, like I can't stop this hitting the ground unless I stick my foot there, because I've got no control over gravity. So we're not subject, we're not subject to man's laws, but we are subject to natural law.
Where was that written, what you just read?
Yeah, I'm coming to it. Good point. I know you're anxious. You want the answers now. Yesterday. He is not bound by any institutions formed by his fellow man without. What does without mean? Outside of it. Without his consent. So if you don't agree to something and you verbalise it or put in writing that you haven't consented, you're not subject to it. But if you keep your big mouth shut, by silence it is deemed you have consented. So that was done by Cruden, C-R-U-D-E-N, versus Neal, N-E-A-L. The case was, I think, ZNC, I have to type this up, 338 May term 1796, and there are others like that. Now, words again, and then I'll move on. This is
Can you put that on the internet?
Should be able to do a Google search if you read out the case
What was
itself.
it out of? Who versus Neil?
Cruden versus Neal, C-R-U-D-E-N versus Neal, N-E-A-L-E. Put in 1796.
What was the first word again, the first name? I've got Neil.
Cruden.
C-R-O...
Think of crude with an N.
N-E-A-L-E or
C-R-U...
N-E-A-L-E.
what
Now,
year?
1796. I feel like a parrot. Okay. IT. Okay. I've used this word a lot, like when I talk to lawyers, especially the tax meeting that I'm going to share tomorrow, or registrars, or anyone in the public, the word silence. So, you being silent, so you agree right now. Oh no, I don't agree to that. Oh really? So what does silence mean to you then? Oh look, I don't agree to that. Well, let me read what your law dictionary says, because I'm not in the public, I'm private. Law, the state of a person who does not speak, or one, oh sorry, this is page 2, halfway down. One who refrains from speaking. In the law of estoppel, silence implies knowledge. In other words, a comprehension and an opportunity to act upon it. Silence estoppel by. Such estoppel arises where a person is under duty. And duty is a very powerful legal terminology, a term. Is under duty to another to speak, or failure to speak is inconsistent with honest dealings. In other words, if he's quiet, what's he hiding? He's being a little bit devious maybe, misleading. We can use those words deadly against them. Honest dealing. Such estoppel includes change of position to prejudice of a person claiming estoppel. In other words, if they remain silent, you could actually make the wrong decision, which is exactly what I cited the tax officers for. So if you be quiet, if you're not being transparent, couldn't I be making a decision in error that might harm certain parties? Wouldn't you be held accountable and liable for gross negligence? Isn't that a jail term? By you being silent with perhaps intent to mislead me. Mate, did they back off at 1,000,000 miles an hour? silence to work a stop must amount to bad faith. Wow, is that powerful? And elements of essentials of such a stop will include change of... Oh, sorry, missed that bit. I've already read that bit. Estoppel. Damages if the estoppel is denied. Duty and opportunity to speak, inducing person claiming estoppel to alter their position. Reliance upon silence. Isn't that what they do? They're quiet because they're hiding something, so they're relying on it. A party sought to be estopped. That's a nice pattern. That comes out of Black's Fifth again on page 719. So I use those kinds of words against them. And you should see how they blush when they realise their fraud is exposed. Because I haven't made the claim, I've read it out of their law dictionary. Now, something I was going to mention earlier, but I sort of digressed. There are some excellent books or films that come out constantly revealing what's actually going on in the world, and wake up, you chattel, wake up and become people again. Alice in Wonderland was a beautiful one. She fell asleep under a tree on a hot day. What's sleeping? Isn't that, what's dreaming? Isn't that fiction? And she dreams she goes down a rabbit warren, chasing a rabbit into the land of fiction, and she sees these characters, you know, big, like cartoon characters, all arguing with one another, making outrageous claims. She's saying, that's not true, what a load of hogwash. It says a bit stronger than that. And she starts to get involved with them and starts to argue with them and reason with them, bringing her truth into fiction. What does the maxim of law say? Bring one that's soiled or adulterated into the rest, all adulterated or soiled. So here she is bringing truth into fiction. They're ready to put her into an asylum.
I was also watching Harry Potter last night. There was a little scene there. He says to Harry, you make a choice to do what is right or do what is easy. And the system
Is easy.
beguiles you to do what is easy.
Give up your rights. Become a chattel. But anyway, she realises by the end of the movie, because, you know, where do we hear about these psych tests? In court, don't we? If people are saying, well, I'm a free man of the land, and then you start acting like chattel, they bring up the issue of a psych test. They're telling you, you don't know who you are.
Yeah.
What's a psych test?
You get a doctor or a psychologist to come and do an interview with you to work out who you really are. Because the court doesn't know who you are. You come in saying, well, I'm a man. Oh, okay, well, how old are you? Oh, 32. Well, let's organise a psych test. You've just testified. Here, as a man, we respond. Over here, we testify. Or we answer. Didn't the Messiah, or doesn't the book record him as saying, so you say? In other words, prove your claim. Who bears burden of proof when there's a claim? The accuser, the one who's making the claim, exactly. So, or didn't he answer a question with a question when they were trying to bait him and trap him? I'm not talking about privately when he had people coming around him and he was educating them. I'm talking about in the public when he was being interrogated or when he was being, you know, asked questions. So he knew who he was. He was a creditor. Didn't the book say he spoke with authority, not as the scribes? Who are the scribes today? Aren't they the lawyers and the scribes, the Pharisees, Sadducees? In their day, didn't they go and rape and pillage the widows' homes? You know, give them 666 or 7 laws or something which they never followed? Well, we got 7 million now. They give all these laws and don't follow them themselves. What's changed? Has anything changed today?
Yes, because we hear and we are learning.
Right. There are a few here that are learning. Right. Well, there's some changes. That's good. But whoever wrote all the Testament, weren't they trying to tell us, hey, grow up, come up to the plate and act like a creditor? The book, the there's so many examples in there about commerce. It's a book really of commerce, how to teach people how to respond and to take responsibility and a way of life.
Which book?
The scriptures. Especially, well, both testaments really, but more so in the New, because people were just chattel of Rome then. You know, it says, give Caesar what is his, and the Creator what is his. And then when Peter said to the Messiah, promised to give a coin as tax to the Roman official, the Messiah was very annoyed, politely. He said to Peter, who has to be taxed? And Peter said, the foreigner. You know, we're living, right? We're foreign to the dead. It doesn't have to be overseas. We're foreign, outside of. Only the foreigners, the dead people, have to pay tax. Then why did you make that obligation? Well, now that you've made it, go down there where you see that fish, get the coin out of his mouth and meet your obligation. But don't do it again. In other words, give Rome what they asked for and give me what I'm due. If you're a man, don't you serve me? That's what he's saying in different words. So if you're a chattel or a person, give Rome what is Rome's, but give the Creator what is his. So he's beating up on Peter. You have to learn a lesson. Some other great books or movies. Who's heard of V for Vendetta?
Oh, yes.
You know, people think, oh wow, is that how the world's going to be? Hello. You know, Matrix trilogy. You know, when they bring these movies out, they don't base it on futuristic technology. They're telling us that this is what we can do to you. You know, 1965, Beam Me Up, Spocky. Anyone ever watch Star Trek? During the war they developed all that. You know, there are things that we're not told about, but it's there. You know, the crafts, they've had them since at least here on Earth since 1943. At least. I mean, made here on the Earth. You know, anyway, getting off track again.
Animal Farm, 1984.
Yeah, Animal
Future
Farm.
Shock.
Ant, the cartoon film, Ant, a rebel ant. You know, they want to kick him and squash him, all that. But in the end, he saves the kingdom, doesn't he? You know, someone who's a lateral thinker outside the box. So, yeah, okay, we'll move on. So think outside the square.
Future Shock.
Yeah, that's right. Well, there's lots, but just when you watch a film, have a look at the meaning behind it.
Oh, absolutely. May I mention the latest film, James Bond, and all of the James Bond movies, they might be in fiction, but they release a lot of information of what is actually happening in the world, including that the latest war is going to be about the control of water.
Yeah, that's right, because that is one of the limiting things on the Earth is water.
During the week there was a film that was advertised on the TV, but I didn't catch what time, but it's Life After Human Beings. And I thought that's interesting title.
Yeah, it is. But look up what human being is, monster. It doesn't mean that we're not here
Actually,
still.
the meaning is coming from humus. I know all the monster and stuff, but the truth in Latin is humus, coming from humus, from the earth. That is human being. Now, we are not human beings, we are divine beings, and we are M with a capital M.
Who hears people talking about, oh, we're flesh and blood? And do you know, on the Gold Coast a few years ago, there was a long court hearing, and the man acting as the defendant actually passed away. He died. So when the judgment was finally made, the judge said, look, as a matter of the judgment, he just said, look, just because the man passed away did not change the, I don't know what the words were, standing of, or status of his persona or his body. And everyone screamed, what are you talking about? He's dead. Of course he's changed. The people missed the boat. What he was saying is, flesh and blood was always dead. Without the spirit, that body's dead.
No flesh to live.
And the scientists have actually measured on point of death, I can't remember if it was 50 gram or 50 milligram difference in weight on point of death that leaves the body. And they even had a body encased, because I know a medical person who told me, that had a really thick glass tomb, and the glass shattered at point of death, releasing something. So for those who are sceptical, well, science is supporting that there is a spirit, and that spirit will last forever if it is honourable, or it gets extinguished if it is dishonourable. So it might be a good point to become honourable. I'm not trying to frighten anyone, it's just, you know, death is just no consciousness. There's nothing to fear. So why do we need to fear anything anymore? Anyway, I just wanted to mention now a bit of a hierarchy of laws, because there's a lot of confusion, and I'm not going to encompass all the little subsections. But essentially, the thing that's above man's laws are the commandments. It's outside of man's control and natural law. After that, we have a hierarchy called the UCC, which is the Uniform Commercial Code. Commercial Code, which was completed, I think, in 1953. It took a long time to put it together. It absorbs all the other man-made laws, essentially, under that umbrella. It's not really law, I think it's just a code. Codification of a whole bunch of statutes.
Amazing enough number of citizen lawyers that don't know about the UCC.
Oh, that doesn't operate here. Well, there are two angles to that. There are several Commonwealths of Australia. And if a judge says, don't bring that garbage in here, that's okay, Your Honour, no problem, but could you know, I just need to know what jurisdiction we're in here today. Do you mind if I ask just a few questions to clarify so I know what I'm pleading to? They can say, yeah, sure, no worries, because they have to show due process, so they will permit you to ask some questions. Well, Your Honour, are we operating today under the common law, which is, or the Commonwealth of Australia that was created under the common law, subject to the British Constitution? Or are we operating under the Commonwealth of Australia that is registered on the American Securities and Exchange Commission as an American corporation, and therefore we're under Admiralty or under the Uniform Commercial Code? Could you tell me which one we're under? And he'll go, ugh. Well, see, you can take what you like. Well, I believe that we're under the common law in that case, and I'm a free man, and you just proceed. Or if you want to, and you like contract law, because that's all this is, Uniform Commercial Code is commercial or contract law. And if you understand contract, you win every time. Or are we under this commercial code today, Your Honour? Because I just need to know where we're coming from. And let him cut. If he won't answer, you answer for him. Oh, I take it we're under the UCC today then. Or the Commonwealth of Australia that you're operating under is under the UCC. That's fine, let's go. You know, lay down the terms. And if it's a contract, you lay down the terms. That's a lot of fun too. We'll go into that a bit more.
Can I get that point? Does he ever clarify which law?
Not yet we have. Oh, some of them have let slip, oh, we're under Admiralty. It does happen. But more often than not, what they'll say is, don't bring that common law crap in here. Don't you bring that Constitution in here. What he's saying is, it ain't valid anymore. Because in 1933, the world went into fiction, 33, when they brought out fiction currency, called reserve banknotes. Everything else followed suit. The laws went into fiction, people went into fiction, everything went into fiction, into fairyland. Where do you think Wizard of Oz came from to tell us? 39. And Alice in Wonderland and all those sorts of things.
But by you stating, by your silence, I'll assume that we're under common law. Don't you establish your own court?
Yeah, you can. You do. That's why if you give the, you know, if he doesn't answer, you can dictate the jurisdiction and you set up the parameters then. You can bring common law in then as a free man. Say, I'm happy to answer to Mr. Sutton as long as you can prove that your corporation can do this, you know, or have an act. That's all court is an act. And if you've got no fear, you can bet your bottom dollar, as long as you're honourable, they'll come to your side, because that mongrel over there, the prosecutor or the lawyer, only ever argues. They are very dishonourable, and honour will always triumph over dishonour. The court is only really a mechanism to sort out, who are you? Are you the dishonourable person or the honourable man?
Who has to pay? They want to sort out who has to pay. Who is going to pay?
If you're the honourable man, he's going to wear the bill. So he'll keep fighting as long as he can. So contract law or commercial law, if you like, it encompasses all the other laws. And then down here you've got common law and equity. And then you've got statute laws, federal, state and laws and bylaws and government, you call them statutes. You know what governments, they don't actually, they're not laws, they're regulations, that type of thing, yeah. So, remembering the judgment that was read out in 1796, who does this section apply to? Persons. So when they bring things up like the Patriots Act, and that they're going to shoot, and do things to persons, should you, as a man or woman, be concerned if you've got the standing? They're not after you. These laws don't apply to you. And a policeman says, the law says, what law? The Queensland Criminal Act says blah, blah. Doesn't it say that a person or a driver has to do this? Yeah, that's right. Could you please show that I am a corporation and not a man? Do I look like a corporation to you? Try and draw them out of being a corporate and do the honourable thing and maybe teach them that they're a man too. So you just break presumptions that you're a chattel. Show that I'm a person. By the way, here's the definition of person and driver. Have a read of that. Do I look like one of them to you? I'm a sovereign. Anyway, they'll never do it to me because I've got the standing. I've got a plate on there and it says leave the man alone. I have been tailored a few times, followed a few times by them though, but they're just checking it out, making sure I'm not causing any mischief.
Don't forget the booby trappy ribbons.
Oh, indeed. Yeah. Move that. So that's just the hierarchy of laws and who it applies to. Okay. Now, what we learned in 2005 is a process called honour, dishonour, which is what I want to spend this session on. We learned that there's in fact 4 ways of responding to anything.
What is SDH?
Honour or dishonour. Sorry, I didn't write it right now. I take shortcuts wherever I can. Part of my nature, because I try and do too many things at once. It's just a process. It's a mindset. And scriptures actually follow that process without saying so. And we can back the mechanism up with several scriptural verses, but essentially everything in life is about contracting and making offers, whether it's a verbal or a written one. If someone says to you, Mark, love the blue sky today, and you look up and it's all cloudy, which planet are you on? But if you said, well, yeah, I agree, it's blue, well, by contract, consensus, the sky's blue. Or if they said, Mark, you're wearing an orange shirt, how come? And everyone in here agreed, but I see a blue one, well, by consensus then, it's an orange shirt. I mean, that's the fiction bit, but what I'm saying is that every presentment or every statement is an offer, and you can do one of 4 processes to respond to it. And respond is different to reply. Reply is that you have actually dealt with it. Response is slightly different. 2 of these are now honourable ways of responding, and 2 of them are dishonourable. The honourable way is what we call a full acceptance. In other words, you know, the sky's blue. Yep, I agree. Or, gee, that dish is dirty. Yeah, it is, isn't it? That's a full acceptance. A more honourable way to respond is what we call a conditional acceptance. We add conditions to it. What that means is, for example, oh honey, could you take the rubbish out? So you could say, yep, no worries, I'll do that right away. That's a full acceptance. Didn't say what the rubbish was though, did I? Okay, anyway, you could say, well honey, as soon as the film's finished, do you mind if I could take it out then? You haven't rejected it, you've just put a condition on it. Or, son, you know, I'm happy to take you out to fishing there, as long as you clean up the room. Your room, you know, which I've told you 3 times before. So that's a conditional acceptance where both parties win. So it's actually more honourable. You could do this, which is what the legal profession is taught to do, to argue. The one with the best argument wins, or another way of looking at it, the one who is least in dishonour wins. If you don't argue at all, what are your chances of winning? Pretty good, aren't they? And I'll show you an example. The other dishonourable way is Dad, can I have an ice cream, please? You're sitting in the lounge room chair. Dad, can I have an ice cream? Dad, can I have an ice cream? Dad. Eventually he walks away with his tail between his legs thinking Dad doesn't give a monkey's about that boy. Wouldn't they be hurt? If you just said no, he probably gets upset for about 10 seconds, but he knows where he stands. Same thing in the legal profession. Don't we get notices all the time? We sort of shove them in the drawer or in the bin or whatever. And then when it goes to court, you don't have an argument because you cannot win from a dishonour. You know, they've already done this administrative process on you, which I'll show how that works next, but a process has been done already that you cannot throw up any excuse and expect to win. You are already in dishonour. So the key is never remain silent. Let me give an example. So I would note those. They're very important in this process. And I read out the definition of silence earlier.
So excuse me, Mark. In those days, people now, like this story I told you about the insurance, they send me a text on my telephone. I don't answer. Is that considered illegal and they ask me to call them?
That could be construed as a dishonour, but you can also break that presumption by sending a text back saying, I'm happy to call you back as long as I haven't previously asked you to put all communication in writing, otherwise it would be deemed as a dishonour on your part.
And if I don't answer at all, it's only a text. Please call me.
That's what they've said. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. If you've had a message like that, please call.
Okay.
You could say, look, I'm happy to call as long as you can show that I haven't previously asked you to put all questions that you might have in writing so that I can honourably respond to you accurately. But how are they going to show that? If you've told them already, how are they going to show you didn't? So that breaks that presumption.
But I don't think it's legal to just send me a text. I don't feel it's legal. You know, I can have lost my telephone. I can have, you know, how do you...
I can only share what I've experienced over the last 8 years when I've wiped maybe 40 credit cards, for example. And when I've done them, they haven't gone to, say, Bay Corp, or they haven't gone into court. Because I treated every letter that we got from them, I answered within 72 hours, 3 days. Under Admiralty, you got 3 days to respond. Otherwise, you're deemed to have accepted whatever you've been given.
What if I lost my telephone?
It happens. It does happen.
So I wouldn't even know they just sent me.
That's right. They may then deem it, pardon me, that you're in dishonour, but you can break that presumption. You can always break. I've learnt very well how to break presumptions, or learnt how to break presumptions very well. That's the correct way around. You know, there's nothing that you can't break a presumption on if you understand how to do it.
I recently changed over to Telstra, and then I discovered that Telstra didn't honour the contract that I expected to be under, and I was cranky, and I said, okay then, I will be breaking this contract, but before I said that, I said, I want a copy of my verbal agreement that I gave you over the phone. They said, we don't keep them. I said, in that case, then we have no contract, and I'll be breaking this contract. And he noted that on my record, that that's exactly right. There is no copy of the contract.
Good. Oh, that's good. You always ask for things in writing. Always. But we need to learn how to do these conditional acceptances, you know, so that you can never be deemed to be in dishonour. You're not arguing, not silent. Conditional acceptance is the best way to address any issue. And we were taught a process by a lady that came from the States. And me being who I am, I put it straight into use, and I only got shot in the foot a few times in courts. Don't you bring that word up again, I conditionally accept. I'll show you the format, and then I'll show you the solution to it. We were told, and I conditionally accept AB's offer to or of CD on proof of claim that EF. Now I'll go through what the other the alphabet letters are. We've got A, B, C, D, E, F. AB is regarded as the offerer. For example, it might be a judge, and he says, you know, sit down. You can sit down now. That's an offer. And I have sometimes said in the past, I'd love to, Your Honour, just got a real crook back today. That's a conditional acceptance. So you're not under the authority. You'll say, do you understand? Well, I don't know, Your Honour. I think I comprehend. You know, to stand under his authority. The offerer, AB. I accept Your Honour's offer to, or whoever's making the offer, to CD, to enter the witness box, for example. Sometimes they say, look, could you just hop over to the witness box so they can cross-examine you, and when you testify, you shoot yourself in the foot. So if you've broken the presumption of being a chattel, and you now have the standing in court as a man or woman, two of the key ways they try and get it over you is that's contempt. Well, you can break that straight away, and I'll show that's quite easy. The other way is just hop in the witness box. And sometimes in the early days, and I'm talking some years ago, you know, we were taught this common law thing. No, you know, rebellious. I'm not doing that. He's got no authority. He's got no jurisdiction. Up to blah, 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 blah. And then that's when the contempts come out. And then you do 3 hours somewhere, and then you bring it back and do it again, another 3 hours. And I thought, there's got to be a better way. And then we learnt this process of honour and dishonour. So instead this time, Your Honour, no problem. Let's hop in. Yeah, I'll go. And then you can tell straight away, oh, what's he got on his agenda now, you know? So you gazump him.
What is contempt? Means contempt.
Contempt.
Yeah.
It means that you're not following instructions of the court. You're actually in dishonour, and that can be jail. People go to jail on contempt. Not on the issue, on contempt. If they can't get you on an issue, they'll raise contempt. And the next thing, you might get 2 years for contempt. Like this fellow that we're getting out of jail got 12 months for contempt of court. Just lunacy. Your Honour, I'm happy to accept that contempt order as long as you can show any law that says asking a few questions is contemptuous. You can't, I take it then that your intent might not have been so honourable, and that maybe you were even intending to injure me just now with that frivolous claim. So if you've got your chequebook open, I reckon it's got to be worth 500,000. Start dictating the terms. That's what a creditor does. I'm telling you, and it works. You know, he spoke with authority. So we go in there speaking with authority now. You know, you can say, look, Your Honour, he's doing business with my debtor. You know, your fiction name. He's doing business with my debtor. You know, the defendant, Your Honour. Doesn't that make him a debtor to me too? He was silent. Oh, okay. So you accept it. For it on the court record, let the court record show your silence as your agreement that he is my debtor. By the way, Your Honour, aren't you a debtor to me too? You're silent again. For it on the court record, let the court record show that the judge today is my debtor. By the way, who's making a claim against me today? You've got 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. There's no claim, Your Honour. I'm going to give you another chance. Second chance. 3 times and out. Who's making a claim here today against me? They won't put a hand up.
It must be
Third
pretty
time.
scary doing it the first few times trying to...
Oh, it is. But mate, I don't have fear.
That's
I've been
just
against
fun,
the wall that many times that I just don't care anymore because I know I'm right. When you're right, you go in with conviction knowing you're right. You just got to find the technique. That's all it is. If I'm talking truth and justice, and I know that they're scallywags and raising controversies, I'm going to win every time. Because they can only operate out of a little sandpit. I've got the whole world. I live in truth. I'm on the planet. They live out of a bit of fiction. So I just say to them, third and last time, otherwise I'll need the order. 1, 2, 3. Sorry, Your Honour. There's no claim against me. Could I have the order of the court, please? Oh, no, we can't give it to you till the afternoon. That'll do, Your Honour. I'll wait till it's there. And I've done that a few times. But what I haven't done, and I'm going to be doing, is, no way, but before you finish and with your wet ink, just put on there the injury awards. I came here today with good intent, honourable intent. You've taken up all my day. They've been making claims all year on me. It's drummed up to 500,000. Could you just put an order for them to pay me now? That's what you do, honestly. You don't need a lawyer. When you have a lawyer, that puts you in the poo because it shows that you are not responsible for your own affairs. That's how we were told originally. There's an element of
A
truth.
child like my son, at 19 years old, I say, please represent yourself. No, Mama can't do it. No, Mama can't do it. So I want to do it. But then I ask, I went to the court and they say, no, I call a lawyer and I ask, can I represent my child? He says, no, you can't. Therefore, what do? I have to take a lawyer for him, you know?
As people, we can't represent someone. How can I represent someone? You know, I was helping a fellow in court recently with a tax matter. He broke the presumption of being the chattel, and he said, I believe I don't have standing here to speak today, Your Honour, which he doesn't. Dead can't see the living, so but I have brought my friend to speak on my behalf. And I thought, oh no. The judge instantly said, oh no, we can't have that. He can't speak for you, you know. He can't speak for you. And I said, Your Honour, come out and speak. He looked at me and I said, Your Honour, I humbly apologise if this honourable court was led to believe that I could speak for somebody else when in fact I don't have the authority or standing to do that. And he just smiled all the way up and we corrected the dishonour. Because if you are dishonourable, you just have to do what? Apologise. Didn't Peter that asked, how many times do we have to forgive someone? Didn't the Messiah, did he say 7 times?
77 times.
70 times 7 times. In other words, as many times as someone apologised and repented, we have to forgive. So, you know, if you then apologise for any and all dishonours that you've committed in this particular matter, whatever you're at, you press a reset button and you can start all over again. Isn't that nice to know? You know, your lawyer won't tell you that because he doesn't know. He's taught adversarial. He's not even taught the law, he's taught process. And then you show them some laws and they say, wow, we didn't know that. How can they? 7 million statutes.
But Mark, how can you overcome the problem of the judge not recognising you as the living man in the court? I mean, you can't represent yourself because that's an oxymoron, that's a physical impossibility. You can't be you can't be an authorised representative of the defendant because you're not a legal practitioner. You were saying before that if you're a third-party representative...
We'll come to that.
Okay, because that's the sticking point that we're having.
Yeah, we need to put questions in writing because otherwise, like down in Melbourne, this is really a 3 or 4 day workshop and I'm just trying to condense it. So we'll cover that in the court section that I'll do later, either late today or early tomorrow.
Oh, Steve, before you go on, speaking of late today, what time is this workshop start? 5 o'clock. Good.
You can go later if you want, but it's just people get a bit fatigued with volume, so we cut off at 5. Okay. You might have claimed hop into the witness box, so that was a full acceptance. Or you can say something, you can do a conditional if you want to. I'm happy to, as long as we can't address it here, Your Honour. If you show me what we can't, if you can't, then obviously you can. Because, if it's not one, it's the other. Oh, we can't do that today? No problem. What can we do? Give me a remedy. And if you ever get stuck somewhere and don't know what to say, well, Your Honour, what's my remedy? Help! What's my remedy? And I'll give you one. You just got to be smart. You use them. EF. I conditionally accept Your Honour's offer to hop into the witness box on proof of claim. And proof of claim is usually something with, like affidavit, for example, with a signature, or a piece of paper with a signature, holding them now commercially liable if they in fact make a statement and it's a lie. Isn't that perjury? That's jailable. So I ask anyone who makes a claim now, well, I'm happy to accept that. Just put it on writing, put it on paper and sign it, and we're happy to accept it. And if they say, we're not putting it on paper, well, then it's a conditional acceptance. Obviously, we don't have to do that if you won't put your name to the paper. Because why would you not do it if what you're telling me is the truth? Or are you trying to hide something and tell a little porky again? As they often do. The public always raise controversies. That's just another word for porkies. On proof of claim that it can be what's called a negatively averred statement or a negatively averred maxim of law. For example, Mr. Patelik, Your Honour, I'm happy to accept Your Honour's offer to call me Mr. Patelik on proof of claim that I am not a man. In other words, to aver means to make a statement of fact, for example. To aver, I aver that this is true and correct. Whereas a negatively averred statement is to put it in the negative and say, show that this is not the case. Because who has to bear burden of proof when making a claim? So if you're saying, well, show that this isn't the case, they have to now make a statement, which is a claim. So who has to prove the claim? They do, not us. I know it takes a mindset of getting used to. When I first saw it in 2005, I led the group up there and, let's go into this thing. Everyone went forward. I thought, I don't get this. So I took a step back and everyone got into trouble. I said, you know, I was a slow learner back then. And one guy persisted with me in New Zealand for 6 months. And when I finally got the message, man, it was powerful. Because we were used to argue, well, I didn't argue much because I don't like argument, but we asked for proof of claim. But most people argue. And you know, when you argue, isn't that using up a lot of energy? You know, you at them, and at the end of the day, you're just worn out. So it's like two teams, and they're having a tug of war with a mighty big rope. So the ones with the biggest muscles, don't they normally win? Draw the other line across the line. Well, what if you just let go of the rope? Don't they fall over? And when you use the honour dishonour process and stop the arguments and just ask for proof of claim, we're happy to accept that I've got 3 legs. Could you just show me a photo, or can you prove that I have 3 legs? And you'll sign an affidavit to that effect. Well, we're not doing that. Aha! So you were telling a porky. You just won. See, it's so easy. Forget the arguments. Another example, who knows of Ian Hankey? You know, he, with the Institute of Taxation Research, took the Australian government to the Privy Council because the Australian government's not legal, and had spent months and months, years on getting the information and taking there, and costing millions of dollars. And I guess they won with maybe 10% and lost with 90. You know, they had one sticking point. They said something about there's not been a lawful Governor-General appointed to Australia, I think, since 1919. So he won that bit. Well, who accepts the incoming government after every election? Isn't it the Governor-General? So if he's not legitimate, what does it tell you about the government? So he did win, but all the other million points, the judge arbitrarily just said, this is the Privy Council. No, I don't think that's the case. Don't think that's the case. All personal opinion. Well, Your Honour, is that your personal or your legal opinion? Because if it's your personal, we're not really that interested, are we, Your Honour? And he'll say, so if that's your legal opinion, could you just sign an affidavit and count, you know, and we'll accept it. Well, I'm not doing that. Well, don't have to do that. Get that all the time from judges. It's okay, Your Honour, I know you don't have to, but I take it by your refusal as your admission of guilt, and that you're trying to raise a controversy, maybe even with intent to injure me. And you don't have to learn the terminology. It's all in the notes. We'll go over some of that tomorrow. You know, in your notes there. So it's just mindset. Just mindset I'm trying to get across. So, negatively avert, like, you know, and show that I'm not a man and that your corporation can, you know, do this sort of stuff. So you've just broken that presumption. But you can also use a negatively averred maxim of law. Like you see, if he says, well, sit down. You know, I'm happy to sit down as long as, on proof of claim that we are not all equal before the law. Because the maxim of law is, we're all equal before the law. So show we're not. Well, you can't. So obviously then you don't have to do what he said. Do you see what I'm saying? Put the burden of proof on him to verify his claim, and if he can't, or if I try not to focus on the magistrate, we want him, or judge, we want them as an ally. You change direction and go after the prosecutor, because they're the ones that raise all the controversies and are trying to injure you. So you just target them, and before long, he'll come swinging your way anyway. You know, I'll give you lots of examples with that in the future. But the problem with this terminology is it sounds so artificial. Your Honour, I conditionally accept your offer of blah, blah, blah on proof of claim, blah, blah, blah. And I was doing that in courts, and they were threatening me with contempt and chucking me in a cell for a few hours to cool down and da-da-da-da-da. I thought, how do we handle this stuff? So we came back when we knew more, and we thought, well, conditional acceptance. What about as long as? That's conditional. So these days, Your Honour, I'm happy to accept that as long as blah, blah, blah. and it works every time. Because it's common language, they can comprehend that.
I think the term of conditional acceptance is that you are upfront about the conditional acceptance first before you state the terms, because you say, I'm happy to accept that, not instantly cut off and not allow you to make the as long as.
Well, you can do that too, but I never let them cut off.
Yeah.
Because I know how they work.
Yeah.
And, if they try to, you just keep going. By the way, is it not dishonourable to interject while I'm trying to reply to your earlier offer? They'd be silent. And in one case, one of them said, oh no, you're the one interrupting. I said, really? Could you just put that on affidavit and sign it, please? Is that your claim? Just rebound straight back to them. But it takes experience. It does take, and you need, where I learned? Apart from in the courtroom, in my car. I used to travel around and think, how am I going to respond to that? How am I going to think? I'll accept that as long as, no. And you just get better and better in the car. If you've got downtime, wherever you've got downtime, you just practice with yourself.
That brings up a great question.
You're supposed to put on paper. Because we're taking up time. Okay, just quickly, but...
These scenarios that you talk about practicing in your car, do you have an audio, effectively tutorial on a CD that can be listened to in the car for purpose of using that driving time for maximum effect and practice the very languaging of which you speak?
Yes. On your disc, you'll see there's a voice folder, and it's got lots of court scenarios, which, by the way, their laws say you can't take a recorder in. We just break the presumption. Don't your laws evidence that a person can't take a recorder in? Yeah, that's right. Well, do I look like a corporation to you? And can you show me any law that says I can't take a recorder in to protect my integrity and protect myself? They'll be silent. I take it there isn't any law that says I can't use one to protect my interests. Thank you very much. See you. And you walk in. Show me the law that says a man cannot blah, blah, blah.
I just want to tell, the first time I went to court and represent myself, I felt like I'd been intimidated. So I just did a letter and I start to read the letter, and the judge interrupted me. So I let him say what he has to say, and then I said, may I please finish? And he said, sure. That's all.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, no, it's fine, but just to explain that, yes, I knew that if he's going to interrupt me and I'm going to answer to his interruptions, I just make it difficult for me. Therefore, I let him say what he has to say, and then I said, may I finish, please?
Yes. Well, they have to be seen to be following due process. If they're not, just bring him up. Your Honour, why are you trying to injure me? Why are you not following due process?
But I didn't want to go in an argument.
Yeah, that's right.
Naturally.
Or you could just say, like I said, Your Honour, may I just please finish?
Yeah,
In other words, do me the courtesy and let me finish my thing.
If you have a recorder in any situation, do you have to let the other parties know that it's being recorded?
No. No, you can't record in here. Oh, really? Well, I'm happy to accept that, Your Honour, as long as you switch off yours as well. That's a conditional acceptance. Yeah, don't argue. It's just not worth your energy to argue with anything anymore. Now that you know there's a solution, you just conditionally accept everything, whether you agree with it or not.
To make you say something different.
That's right.
I missed that, but okay. It's just, the concept is when you're accepting, it's not that you're accepting what they're offering, it's that you're taking control over it. And that's where I tripped up for 6 months. We learned that you can handle any, what was called presentment, an offer, like a tax bill, for example, or a bank statement, your monthly credit card statement, or electricity bill, or whatever it is, but it's a presentment, more commonly known as a negotiable instrument. And it's negotiable because it's tradable as such. You can negotiate it as a bill of exchange instrument, and I recommend everybody download a copy of the 1909 Bills of Exchange Act for Australia, because it's very, very revealing on what bills of exchange and negotiable instruments are. It'll say in there that these things are legal tender: promissory notes, cheques, reserve bank notes, and bills of exchange instruments. So,
Bills of Exchange Act.
Australian Bills of Exchange Act 1909. I'll just read out what a bill of exchange is, and you'll see it straight away when you're using a cheque. You know, a bill of exchange, this is their definition under the Act. It's defined as a bill of exchange is an unconditional order in writing addressed by one person to another, signed by the person giving it, requiring the person to whom it is addressed, because it's presented to the bank, to pay on demand or at a fixed or determinable future date a sum certain in money to or to the order of a specified person or to bearer. So when you've got a cheque, you've got three parties. You've got the bank on there, they're the ones you're issuing the cheque to actually instruct them to pay a third party. And that third party name will be on the cheque, and you're the one that endorses it. Well, a bill of exchange instrument, that's what it is. And you can make your own bills of exchange, you can do your promissory notes. Cash is the same thing, because you'll see several parties on the cheque, on the Reserve Bank note as well. So we regard bills as a bill of exchange as well, because you look at the bottom, it's usually got that tearaway slip, and it says that that is a remittance advice. It's actually remittance. Remit is to return for payment. So when you send that little bit back, they've actually been paid, though you can't pay anything. Because the only thing by definition that can pay anything is something with substance, where sweat and tears has gone into, gold and silver.
Put your stamp on?
Yeah, the above section, we put our stamp, which we're coming to, but that section on the bottom is actually your remedy, your cheque. So when you send the remittance slip back for payment or offset, and you send a cheque with it, you've actually paid them twice. And when I tried that with AAPT, which was my mobile phone carrier, they accepted it. It was an $800 bill, and they wrote back and said, look, as long as you don't tell any of our staff this, we'll accept it. So I did that. But I tried that on Telstra and on the monthly account for the home number. The first month they wrote back and said, this is very interesting. And I got a letter from the CEO saying he's going to follow the process to its fruition. He had a very keen interest in it. He'd appointed two managers, one in Melbourne and one in Sydney, to oversee the account. But followed the process, used the slip, sent it back with a copy of the birth certificate, a certified copy of this thing, with a stamp put on top, which I haven't told you about the stamp yet, but that was with the remittance slip. And that went back, and I've got a letter back a few weeks after saying that we're going to disconnect the line. So what I did immediately was to respond to them, write a letter, and that one was a conditional acceptance, which I haven't gone, I'll go through in a minute. And part of the conditions that they were agreeing to was that if they then, after tender of payment has been made, then they would agree that I'd be an injured party if they now cut me off. So they let the line go. The next month the bill went up naturally. Well, it shouldn't be naturally, it should have been offset, but it wasn't. They just didn't cut it off. For 5 months they didn't cut it off, and then suddenly they did cut it off. So I don't know where, maybe I did something incorrect, maybe I went into dishonour. That was 3 years ago, and the bill was about $800. My counterclaim is $100,000 now, but I just haven't had a chance to press it. And one of the hiccups was that we didn't have a lawyer that would assist us in pressing it, because they are now told not to assist anyone in the private, just like notaries. I'm jumping the gun, but
Is that on your credit report?
not to my knowledge. Not to my knowledge. I'll have to do a check because I haven't done one for a while. But
Mark, if
I
you
never
want to be-
went into Dishonour. I offered always to tender payment or offset. And the fact that I'd already done it, I never rejected. I said every time a notice came, I immediately replied saying, show where I have not already tendered the prepaid asset account to offset that obligation. They could never show it, so they went into Dishonour, not me. Okay. Now what I want to go into, so that you get an understanding of how to get an agreement with any party. It can be, you know, for litigation purposes, lawyers coming against you. It might be with a breakup of spouse, and you know they start proceedings or whatever. You can make an agreement with them by their silence. It's called an administrative. It's the private administrative process. It's a 4-step process. Now, language is very important. I went to a hearing only a couple of weeks ago where the fellow that was speaking said, you know, I've done my private administrative law. And he got shot in the foot for it. It wasn't private administrative law at all. It's a private administrative process. Judgy Wudgy knows that. So we've got to get our terminology correct and not be so loose with wording. If we look at, say, a bill, you've just received a bill in the mail. Here's 0 time, you've just received it, right? Back here, they're already getting ready to send it out. You were joking. Oh, okay. If we look at this as 28, how long do we usually get to pay a bill?
Maybe 30 days.
30 days is commonly, 28 sometimes.
21.
They're the most common times. But that's under statute law, remember? That's statute law. Where was, in the law hierarchy, where was statute law? Was it not under Admiralty? Right. It's right at the bottom. It's the weakest laws. So what they've done by giving you 28 or 30 days is they've deliberately put you into dishonour. Because we don't know any better. We're dumb chattel. So after 3 days here, this is a week, right? 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, say 28 days. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm not very good with number lines. I nearly flopped at preschool or grade 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I couldn't speak English till I went to school. It was a battle then. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, that worked out okay. So here's where you receive your bill. If you haven't actually done the acceptance within that 3 days' time, it is deemed that you've accepted the bill. Because under banker's acceptance, the maker, which is the maker of the bill, any bill or any negotiable instrument, bill of exchange, the maker bears primary liability for it unless dishonoured by a third party. The third party is your agent in commerce, you know, the name on the bill, and they've dishonoured it by holding on to it for more than 3 days. That means that whoever's holding it is liable for it. Now they've got to pay. But if you grab the bill, thanks, and return the bill with a stamp on it, with the remittance on it, with your birth certificate, a certified copy of it, just find the stamp. Notice. Oh, where's the stamp? Oh, here we are. Page 88 and I think. Oh, sorry, is that 78, 79? It's a handwritten number, so it's not as clear as it could be. 78 to 79. On page 78, you'll see a stamp there, accepted for value, because it's valuable consideration, and surrendered, which means to give back for them to settle and close the bill. Exempt from levy, because there's no taxes on it, and then your autograph in there, put a date. The top number there is your Centrelink number, though you can also use your 5-digit birth certificate number with your year of birth, but I think most people have a Centrelink number. You just ask for it. If you're not sure, just ring them up and ask for it. And then the free man, commonly called a free woman, by that example, charged to the account of the corporation, because the corporation sits on this consolidated account, Crown consolidated account. The reason you need to put that birth certificate in is anybody could be laying claim to that account, and there's a gatekeeper that is going to see, are you the real McCoy or are you a pretender? If they don't see a birth certificate, they're going to say, well, we don't know who you are. What are you trying to do, access an account that you've got no standing to do? So when you send in the birth certificate, it's showing them that you have the standing, a certified copy of it. And you put this stamp over the top of the birth certificate, just run it, the certified copy through your printer, and put this stamp overlaid on it, just like this court adjournment order. Yeah.
So can you do a scan?
Yeah, that
certificate?
is. No. Yeah.
A scanned certified
Well,
copy?
I scan my certified copy of one into my computer so I can print out as many as I like. Otherwise, you're running down to a JP all the time.
So for me, I don't have birth certificate in Australia. I have a citizenship, so do I use that?
Yeah, citizenship would suffice in that example, to the best of our knowledge, because a few people have done that now.
When you put in, so surrender for accept the value and surrender, when you put down twice the value?
Yeah, you can put down any value you like because it's not coming out of your pocket. You know, I've done that with court orders, several of them, for other people's court orders. There's actually a chap in the room at the moment that we did it on back in June. That wiped that court order for a rather large tax bill, but it didn't correct the public record in the tax office. All it did was offset the court order. So they've come back now in a completely different jurisdiction, in a magistrate's court, when it was heard in the federal court, in a local place, and the tax office wants to raise another controversy again. So we're going to wipe that order out too when it comes. But what we need now to do is to correct the public record, get the tax office to amend its records to show that our private records, their public ones should match our private ones. Here with private and public, private because it's got substance, substance says it's true, correct, complete, certain and not misleading. Whereas public can only ever say it's true and correct. And that's, you'll see letters sometimes, yeah, we believe this to be true and correct. But it's not true and correct, complete, certain and not misleading. Because in the public there is no substance. They cannot prove anything. So they can't complete that whole statement. And if it's not there, it's misleading by omission.
What about the 3 days you mentioned up there? That is from the day the bill was
You receive it. The
Receive
date you receive
But they can
something.
prove really when you receive that bill either.
Doesn't matter. On
No,
all
no,
my documentation that I get, I put on the top date received, boom.
Yeah.
There is no controversy then now, because I wouldn't sign anything if I thought it was false. That's called jail. So why would I commit perjury?
No.
No. I'm just saying,
That's 3 days.
in the private, we're prepared to put our body on the line, aren't we? In the public, they never do. They're cowards, because there's nothing, they can't prove anything, so they will never sign anything. When I say sign, you might see a signature, but you won't see a name under it. You look at any documentation, there's either no signature and no name, or there's only a signature or a name, but not both. Never both. because they aren't prepared to swear an oath that this is true, correct, certain, complete, and not misleading. So in our letters to them we say, look, please show this, that, and that, and if it isn't the case, please sign an affidavit saying so. And they never do, because they can't. They'd be lying.
So we can pay our rate with that stamp on our rate thing.
You can do that on anything. Now, I'm not saying that the council comprehends what you're doing. Most of them are pretty small, they might not.
So
But ignorance of the law is no excuse. You follow the process. So if it wants to go to court, mate, I'll beat them every time. You want to take it to court? No problem, please do, because I'm going to show up your fraud in court. And often that'll just go away then. But what they do acknowledge maybe more is a promissory note, but the councils don't know really what to do with that either. But that's ignorance of the law. Is that an excuse now, is it? See, I issued, I'm digressing again, we'll come back after lunch and finish this, but, you know, I issued a promissory note, which is one of these things, against a fuel company. They gave us an account. Anyway, we had some things happen, a company went under and we were exposed, so I thought, well, I'll issue one of those. Well, they took it to court. The judge said, oh, don't bring up the issue that about whether promissory notes are legitimate or not. So what's he saying? He's saying they're legitimate. So the only other way they could bring it unstuck is if I brought it unstuck. And I guess I did in a way, because they wouldn't accept it in the end. And I didn't know enough 3.5 years ago how to close it then. Now today I can. But what the company tried to do was to take property, real estate property, off a trust in lieu of the debt. They'd done a search and found the property as chattel on a financing statement that we can do. And I'll go into that more in the day, so don't worry about terminology. But anyway, they did the search and found it. And I said to him, to the judge, can a property be taken from one entity in lieu of an alleged obligation for another? Or would it be a theft? Well, he was quiet. So I said, well, obviously it's a theft. So that stopped them taking the property. But if I hadn't have said something, my silence was my permission for them to rape and pillage me and take that property. People say today, oh, trusts, they're worthless. They're only as strong as the mouthpiece that supports it. Because a trust, for example, is a separate legal entity to a person or a man, on equal standing with a person. You don't own property, by the way. That does. You look at your title. Anyone got real estate property? Look on your title. You'll see capital names, and it also says on there, tenant.
Certificate of title as well, not a title deed.
Yeah, sorry, certificate of title. What's a tenant?
It's obvious.
Well, who owns the land then?
Temporary occupier.
Maybe the Crown. You only have a lien position on that title. And it's usually 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th position. We'll talk about that more tomorrow.
So what do we have
We're going to have a break now for lunch.
Last is it on question time?
Yes, it's a quick question. But I'll tell you straight up, if the question is going to be answered, I'll tell you the answer.
sorry.
Okay. I always believe in ladies first accept. Where we talk about always answering notices, all right, isn't it most important to answer notices that they can prove you received? Because when it comes to the crunch, would your defence or rebuttal not be, provided you can show that I received such notice?
Your Honour, I'm happy to respond to any notice as long as it can be shown that I received it, because I have not seen or been presented with any material facts or evidence that show that I've received anything, and I don't believe it exists. Now, is that for a mouthful? But when you know how to reply, it's very easy.
Also,
Thank you.
You don't have to go to that extent. You can say, I literally said, I received this notice on proof of claim that it has any bearing on morality.
Well, you understand that, and maybe that, or you could just say, look, so I'd like to, it's just that I don't believe I've received a notice yet.
And what if you
But Mark,
follow a
isn't it
return
the-
to sender format where you blatantly
Well-
haven't received the document?
That's a dicey one. We used to do it a lot, but
Yeah.
it might be evidence of a dishonour that we're refusing acceptance. But if it's in the name of the chattel, the person, are you allowed to open somebody else's mail?
No.
Isn't that a mail fraud? You could just write on this, sorry, acceptance refused for cause without dishonour to you, or you could put undeliverable as addressed. It's always a remedy.
Deliverable as addressed, you say?
Undeliverable means they can't deliver it because it's the wrong name on there. You know, undeliverable as addressed, or not at this address. I don't know where the person or the chattel lives. I don't have any first hand. Actually, I was a bit rude once. I gave my birth certificate up to the magistrate. I said, "Oh, the person's here today." Very dishonourable. Anyway.
But in fact, all that is a big show, because they others put a name on you with capital and this and that to make you believe this and that. This is all really, it's just ridiculous, all the whole thing. The other men are believing they have power over you because they change your name or because, okay, so now we get to know the truth. But that's
It
why
sounds
don't everybody
crazy that we've
get
got
to
to
learn
jump
that
over
and just
these
say,
hoops. I understand what you're saying.
this is...
All these twisted, distorted, fancy we grown-ups being twisted and distorted to think about the difference between a person and a man. My parents are German, everything is black and white. Don't bring your garbage fiction into my life. That's my attitude, Stop with the rubbish and the fiction. Well, if that's how the system works, I've just learned how to work it.
That's our parents, that's our parents.
Everything's not always black and white, but I'm used to saying, "Oh, that's a lie. Don't give me that crap. We're fighters here. We stand on the truth. Don't give me that rubbish or take it back." Well, you got to have a big gun, bigger than the system if you want to win. So since someone already tried to kill the world order and failed, that way ain't going to work. I'm telling you, it's not going to work. So there's got to be a better way. This way, there's no argument. I've preserved my energy, my life, and we win. Mate, how much better does it
We
get?
have to learn all the garbage to win, we are
It's not that
creators, we have
difficult.
better things to do,
I
really.
know.
Mark, I
It's
think
like
you-
learning maths. It sounds hard at the beginning, but eventually or learning a bike. The first time it's,
But we could be
Yeah.
creating beautiful things instead of learning all those things, you see.
we shouldn't have to learn all this. But the scriptures talk about walking an honourable walk anyway. And the reason that we have the world as it is today is that people were negligent. They didn't follow the commandments, so they go out and rape and pillage other people. So because you're now a chattel, because you're not loving your neighbour, you need laws from governments to teach you what is right and wrong. And they're raising thousands every day because you're still disobedient despite being 7 million statutes. How many do we need? We've got 10. If we just followed the 10 governments, it'd be gone.
It's not even that, really, it's about people don't want to think anymore. They don't want to think.
Yes.
Everybody always sees you, somebody has done it for me, I just have to do that.
Well,
They don't want to think.
Dig a hole in the ground for me so I can jump in if I can't think anymore. Because I don't want to be here if I can't
That's
think.
what's about.
Because I have fun.
Mark, I think
Man.
you'll get into trouble if you return mail saying that the person not as addressed or whatever, because the entity that you're returning it to would then see that you're going into a state of dishonour.
I don't do that anymore.
I
I'm
think
happy
that's-
to reply
I
to
think that's
anything now.
an unwise move.
Well, we could only address at the point we were at that time. I don't do that anymore. That should be enough. I don't do it anymore. If you want to do it, that's fine.
I think you have to respond to what mail
But I'm
comes
quite
your
happy to
way.
reply to anything these days.
And is it registered response always? Or is it
If it's important, then it should be registered mail. In fact, that's a question for there.
posted and dated within 3
Yeah.
Just to come back to your statement before about it's your parents' fault. The
It's not
deception,
not fault, I didn't mean that.
the deception's been around
Wrong.
since before your parents were born.
That's right, I
Thousands
didn't
of
mean
years,
it's not
yeah.
the pound fault,
But what-
we children believe like in Santa Claus, right?
Yeah.
That's a lie. So today we believe that those people are more important than you. So
problem-
we learn through observation and we learn all these things, they make no sense. I am a free person by nature, I'm a free spirit, I travel the world, I don't pay tax, and I never listen to, or I am a
Let me add.
rebel in a way, you know.
Let me add. The problem is we're not debriefed at the age of 18 or 21, the age of consent, that we are the authority of ourselves. There's no one else.
We've been
Unless we let
brainwashed, so you know,
Yeah.
we've been brainwashed. When we're 18, okay, you have
Thousands of years.
It all depends. you
This
know.
admiralty, it dates back probably to Babylon. Because they had corporations in Babylon already. When the Jews, or they're not Jews, they're you know, today they're 95% are Asians that immigrated into Russia and took over the people of the Hebrew lands. But I'm talking now about the ancient Hebrews. When they got taken captive, they learned those Babylonian laws, and they brought back the Talmud. Have anyone ever read the Talmud? I've seen parts of it. It's a scary book. It's all right to go and rape and pillage and take the property off Christians. And we're going to take over the world, and we're going to eliminate the population.
But
Might
that's
just
all
go
about
see if you can
division,
find
You
one.
speak of the Christian, you speak of the Hebrew. Religion has been put to divide people.
I know.
Okay?
Well, that's what I said in the
So
beginning.
the
It's all about
Bible,
the same.
story, I think I sent you this DVD that I received about the fact that Jesus never even existed. It's a repeat of the story from the Greek.
17
The 12
times.
disciples are the son of the horoscope.
I don't
So
want to
it's-
upset people,
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
Because
Me neither, but
I'm not here to upset
let's
people. I'm
say-
just trying to give some information.
It's
That's
a
all.
fact, you know.
And I don't want to
Let's
say
say
that.
we are here to
One
speak
last point
truth.
before you,
I'll accept that claim if you can prove it.
I can.
And that is, when you are sending back a remittance, is it your practice to send it back as registered mail so you know they got it?
Yes.
It's part of your witness. That's your witness.
It's in the public, it's a witness. If they claim they didn't receive it, you can backtrack, there's a registration number. That's after lunch.
Mark it.
So if we can meet back at, by